Welcome back to the Stoic Theory Podcast. I was saying how in the first episode how I didn't have a name for the podcast and, was trying to still figure out a name, and honestly, I still am to this day. But I think I might keep it to just Stoic Theory. Because if you really think about it, all of these podcast names, Stoic Theory just goes with it. I don't even have to explain myself. It's just Stoic Theory. So I thought that was pretty interesting to bring up. Just to start off the podcast, just to say, I'm probably going to keep it to the Stoic Theory Podcast or Stoic Theory. Because it just goes. But for today's podcast, I decided to speak on, injuries and how injuries can really affect an athlete, right? So when I was playing competitively in baseball, my injury actually led me to quitting. So basically what happened was my coach decided that it was a smart idea to throw a fielding practice on pavement where it's very slippery and there's gravel everywhere and there's rocks and you could trip very easily. So we were practicing and we're into the first bit of practice, and I remember going for a fly ball. I pivot to my right hand side, go for a fly ball, and I completely slip. But this time, I didn't inflame my Achilles at all. So I slipped, and my coach saw it. He was like, just be careful next time, because it's pretty slippery. Thanks for telling me, by the way. So I go for another fly ball. This time I slip the same way that I slipped the first time. My coach got pissed because I missed the fly ball. He's like, ooh, I missed the fly ball. Blah, blah, blah. Anyways, so I missed the fly ball. I slipped the exact same way. And boom, my Achilles gets inflamed. I felt this weird tingling feeling in my right side of my leg, and I was like, oh no, this is bad. This is really bad, right? So I'm walking back, kind of limping. No, not really walking. In a sense, I was in a good amounts of pain. Whenever I would walk, I would feel like this weird stretch feeling, but it would be as though my leg was overstretched, in a sense, if that makes any sense. When you're stretching one of those bands and you feel it kind of tighten? That's how it felt like to walk. So I was feeling that, and I'm like, okay, this is definitely not a feeling that you're supposed to feel. And you're like, so I sit down, and my coach is like, why are you sitting? And I said, I think I did something to my leg. He was like, no way, just, sit down, rest for a bit, stretch it out. So what do? I'm stretching it out. I'm trying to do everything possible to get back on the field, not the field, to get back on the pavement, but to get back out there and, keep practicing. So my coach notices I'm sitting down and I'm stretching, He's like, how are you feeling? I'm like, not good. Honestly, not good. Because my Achilles, it feels the same way. My leg, it's not moving properly. And so he's like, okay, go inside, see if your trainer's inside. My trainer wasn't inside, so I was just sitting inside for the rest of their practice until everyone came. I remember I was in the change room, sitting down, and my buddy comes up to me. He asks me what's wrong. And I'm like, I don't know what I did, but I'm in a serious amount of pain. He's like, yeah, coach was not the smartest. A lot of guys were slipping out there. And yeah. So I get in the car, I tell my dad. My dad's pissed off. Like, really pissed. Right? And so we drive home. I felt it, tried to stretch it out. Felt the same way. So we went to the doctors. And yeah, the doctor basically told me I have an inflamed Achilles. Now, prior to this, I knew the consequences were pretty high of getting injured during this period of time. For the main reason that we were going to Florida for 2 weeks and it was a showcase tournament. So I was out for 2 to 3 weeks. I think it was, 3 weeks, almost 4. Completely sat for the Florida tournament until, let's say, the end of the tournament, when we were facing crappy teams and there was no scouts there whatsoever. So it was very discouraging. You work so hard up to this point, and then it gets ruined because your coach decides to hold a practice outside in a parking lot because the inside, I forgot what was wrong with the inside, but I think there was another practice going on. Or he just thought it was a smart idea to go outside and practice. I don't know. I was in there every single day, working on my swing, working on my fielding. And it all came up to that point, to where I was injured in one of my biggest moments of my baseball career. Again, it was discouraging. And it did lead me to quitting because I lost all my confidence in my play. I was the best fielder in Ontario, in my kind of province / state, whatever you want to call it. The best fielder, had one of the best on-base percentages and averages throughout the whole league. And it ended up me quitting because the last few weeks that I was playing were probably my worst few weeks, because I was in this mental state of fear. I feared not getting injured again. It was weird. I feared like I lost my skill in playing the sport, but I didn't. It was all a mindset, which is pretty interesting to think about. What the mind can do. Because I remember I was on a roll, and then that happened. And I would say baseball players call it the yips. The yips is basically when you can't throw a ball, you can't field, you're in like this mental state and you can't get out of it, right? Actually, it's funny because quick little off the story, but it does connect. But my teammate, he had the yips that year. He could not throw the ball, even in warm-ups. Just goes to show you that what the mind can really do when you get in a negative mindset, right? And how you need to get out of those negative mindsets in order for you to succeed, honestly. So going back to the story. Yeah, I couldn't throw, couldn't field. My hitting went down completely. And it was just a mess. Led me to getting benched for pretty much the rest of the season. And I decided halfway through the season to quit. Was it the smartest idea? No. Was it the most sophisticated way of leaving a team? No. And I wouldn't recommend it to anyone. Because it did, like, not necessarily did it close any doors, because it didn't. It just, it's a way that you don't want to leave. You know, when you commit to something, you commit and you don't quit until you're done for that season or for that period of time. Same thing goes with the job. If you're at that job and you really don't like the job, stick it out for a bit, right? You don't just want to leave quickly and on bad terms. You get what I mean? So I wasn't on bad terms with anyone. But again, when you leave a team, you finish the season with them and then you leave. And you make sure that everything's okay. I even remember I was so afraid to play that I was milking my injury a little bit more than I had to. When my coach would ask me if I wanted to go out there, I was so scared to go back out because I felt so much pressure to really show up. And I would tell him, no, like my leg isn't feeling too great today. Sorry, can't go in. So I would just be benched for that game. You know, though he did give me the opportunities, but at the same time, I let those opportunities fly away because I was scared. Right? And when you deal with these injuries as an athlete, you have to understand that the injury that you are dealing with is temporary. It's not there to stay. Even if you tore your ACL or your UCL, you blew out your arm as a pitcher, you're going to be out for like a year or two just from those injuries. But even then, you must understand that those injuries are just temporary. And you will be back as long as you put in the work to be back. It's all in the mind, right? If you're someone right now who tore their ACL, who's out for an extended period of time, even just 2 weeks, just know that there are things that you can do today to make you a better player for tomorrow. Right? Going to your chiropractor to get stretched out. That's making you a better player because it's getting you to that period to where you're going to play again. It's all a mind game. Right? And so when you realize that, you see it as, okay, now that it's a mindset, now I can get back into it. Honestly, you just have to get the fear aspect out, and then you can get to playing again. Because the fear is what holds you back from actually playing. Right? The reason why I would say I stopped playing is because of fear. Because of the pressure that I would feel while playing. You know, I didn't start feeling that pressure until I started playing at a really high level. And if you can't deal with pressure, it'll catch up to you eventually. Trust me. If you have that little bit of pressure in your mind, like, oh, I don't want to mess up. That's the worst thing possible to have in your mind. No, you want to mess up. Especially when you're playing competitively. Because you know that you're going to learn. Right? And so, if pressure is your biggest fear right now, get out of that mindset completely. Because the only way that you could get out of that fear is by doing it, making the mistake, or just by surrendering. Just surrender to what's happening. If your biggest fear is that you're gonna get a fly ball hits you with 2 outs, bottom of the ninth, and it's a tie game, and there's a runner on third, or you could take that to any sport in a high pressure situation. If you're afraid of that, get that out of your mind. Surrender to when that moment does happen, and don't surrender by quitting. I mean, surrender by saying to yourself, whatever happens, happens. All I can do is play the ball, or all I can do is hone in my skill. You know what I mean? So, the best, it's very corny and it's very cheesy, but pressure does make diamonds. Pressure allows you to solve problems, to succeed in life. Right? And again, dealing with an injury as an athlete is all a mindset. It's all a mindset. You can run away from your problems, or you can stick to what you're doing, suck it up. Yeah, you're injured, whatever. But guess what? Don't you want to be back out there? So you have to suck it up, get back out there, and realize that it's just a mental game. You're playing chess with yourself, and it's very easy, well, especially when you're stagnant, to lose that chess match. Because you're in your thoughts, you're just constantly thinking, staring at walls, because meanwhile you're so used to being outside and working, you know? Now it's perfect because I remember speaking to a mental toughness coach with my team. He was a special guest. Not my coach, but he was like a leader in the organization. He was like the big man, right? Under the actual big man, which nobody really knew. And he got this speaker on. His name was Ronan Byrne. I don't know if I'm butchering that name or not, but Ronan Byrne. This guy played pro rugby. He was a 5-time Ironman triathlete, a Spartan competitor, a marathon runner, and he won bodybuilding shows. And he's done so much more too. Owns his own mental toughness business. Like he's like the David Goggins in the shadows. If David Goggins wasn't famous, he would be this guy. And so I remember him saying that for you to actually succeed, or for you to get that anxiety out of you, right? Because he was speaking this to my whole team, is to just go against your brain. If you're someone who's afraid of showering, hop in the shower. That's basically what he was saying, right? It's very easy to think about, but it's very easy to forget that at the same time. That's one of the biggest takeaways. Sorry, let me take a sip of water. Drinking out of a glass Fauji bottle. Always. Anyways, so that I would say was my biggest takeaway from Ronan. Also, he has a really cool name. I just need to point that out. But yeah, that was my biggest takeaway. And I remember hearing that as an athlete, and I was like, wow, this changed my life, honestly. Because I was someone who grew up actually with very poor anxiety. Struggled with it since I was in grade 6. You can blame it on the food that I was consuming. You can blame it on Western society, whatever. Anyways, I've dealt with it, and I've become a Zen master now. And the main way I became and defeated anxiety is by having these mentors and also using the skills that these mentors taught me, such as just do what you fear most, right? What the mind is fearing right now, again, Obi-Wan Kenobi says it best. The mind can deceive you, right? I'm pretty sure that's how the line goes. Don't quote me on it. Right? The mind deceives you. And so when you realize that the mind is just a product of deception, at some parts, obviously the mind works for you, but a lot of times it can work against you. And so knowing that, you have to just figure out certain tactics and systems to where the mind can work with you constantly, right? My biggest thing is if I'm in a period of high anxiety, let's say, I'll breathe. That's my system, because I figured out that. But my main thing is that, because I don't feel anxiety anymore. I truly don't, and I'm very thankful for it, because I found God, and because I learned to surrender to whatever happens in life. Whatever happens, happens. As long as I take my actions, I know that they're my actions, and I have to deal with consequences. Free will and its consequences will help you with mental toughness. Just read Soren Kierkegaard, and you'll realize free will and its consequences. You know? I'm someone who has struggled with mental toughness throughout my whole career, right? Still to this day, I kind of struggle with my mental toughness. Although, now it's not on the fear mainly. It's mainly on just the confidence part. Right, but we'll get to that soon. And so, Ronan would speak to us about mental toughness, and he spoke to us a couple times. The first time it was in person, and the second time he spoke to us online on a Zoom call. And I remember him speaking on how he would go out for dinner and he wouldn't even eat what he went out for dinner for. He would eat his own meal, like chicken and rice. Obviously, it's not the most nutritious thing, but if he was cutting down, right, because he was doing bodybuilding shows, all this stuff, and he actually won one. He would eat chicken and rice, you know, while he was out with his friends at restaurants that they had reservations to. Even with his family, he would do it too. Right? So just goes to show how mentally tough this guy was and how committed he was to winning. You know, he's a guy who enjoys winning, and he knows that you need to clear the mind. The mind needs to be like an iron door in Minecraft. You just can't break it. You know? The zombies can't come in and, you know? And so, if the mind has to be strong in order for you to win, is your mind strong? Is it? Because that's what Ronan would preach to us. Winners don't have weak minds. They don't. Michael Jordan does not have a weak mind. Kobe Bryant did not have a weak mind. LeBron James does not have a weak mind. Like, I can go on and on the list. Ronaldo, all these guys. Messi. You think that they have weak minds? No, because winners are confident, A, and B, know that they have to surrender to their skills when they play. It's funny because my best games were the games where I would surrender. And I didn't realize that until after I quit. Right? If I put pressure on myself before the game, I would always, play crappy. But if I didn't put pressure on myself before the game and I just surrendered, I played amazing, right? Just an example is I would face guys who were throwing 90 miles per hour at I was younger. I was younger at the time. Anyways, I would face those guys. I would hit amazing. Whenever I was in America, I would play amazing because it was good baseball. And I would surrender to the pitcher. I would surrender. I would say, you know what? F this guy if he thinks that he's going to get me out, because he's not. Right? But I wouldn't be putting pressure on myself in that way. I would be putting pressure on myself like good pressure. I would say, F this guy if he thinks he's going to get me out, because he's not. And you know what? I'm just going to surrender to my swing. I know that I have the quick hands to get to the ball quick enough. And just surrender. Use my hands to my advantage. What would happen? I would hit liners into gaps against these guys. Fast pitching was always my strong suit. And then we would face crappy teams. And what would end up happening? Because I would think about it too much, I would say to myself, oh fuck, it's a crappy team, we gotta crush these guys, got to. The worst thing you could say before a game, before the gym, before doing anything performance-based is, I got to, or I gotta, or I have to. Nah, man, just go in there and play. Why are you putting so much pressure on yourself, So whenever we would play the crappy teams, we would play on a smaller field, right? I would always hit like shit those games. Because I put pressure on myself to play good against the crappy teams, but I wouldn't put pressure on myself to play good against the good teams, which is kind of a weird way of thinking. But I think it's because you don't want to look bad. That's the main thing, right? It's all about status, which is what we go after as humans. Now this actually transitions into my next point really well, which is confidence. Now again, I've spoken on my struggles with mental toughness, but I think the biggest struggle I've always had was confidence. Now, confidence is a key factor to living a life of success, honestly. If you're someone who is struggling with confidence, just know that there are ways that you can boost your confidence, and there's ways that you just have to not give a fuck. Sorry, I shouldn't be swearing. You just have to not give a frick. And just do you, okay? So, again, I've spoken to you about baseball and how I've struggled on confidence. And, one of my coaches, always the best coach I've had, right? He was like a second father to me. Taking me to games, all this stuff. He was my head coach for a bit. And he was the best coach in the sense that he knew how to deal with people. He definitely read How to Win Friends and Influence People, because he's an 170, 80, 90 million year old man. Definitely saw Jesus fart. And so he had a lot of wisdom, and he knew how to deal with people, right? How to outwit them, or how to work with them, or, he was just very good with people, and I really admired him for that. So he knew the type of guy I was. I was fairly quiet. high energy, really good at hitting, really good at fielding, and he knew to put me in certain situations where I would succeed because he wanted to boost my confidence, right? And it helped, that's for sure. But I still struggled with the confidence thing because, and he knew it too, because he would tell me, I don't know why, you get so pissed at yourself or so down on yourself, and why you're very passive, not only when speaking to people, but when, it comes to pitching. Because I was never a pitcher. I really did struggle with pitching. And so, pitching was off the list completely, right? When we got to the age of, I would say, around 16, got off the list. Anyways, so he would tell me, you have a good arm, you have this, you have that, your ball moves amazing. I don't know why you don't have the confidence when you're up there. And I never listened to him. I don't regret it. I don't regret anything that I did. He was a wise man, and he would always tell me to have more confidence. And you know what? Having more confidence is definitely a key in life. Another example is he would tell me after, 'cause whenever I would strike out, I wouldn't strike out a lot. I was one of those guys that just wouldn't strike out. I hated striking out. Hated it. I think I would rather walk than strike out. Because at least walking, I'm on base, I get to steal, and I'm helping out the team, I would hate striking out because I never did it. I never struck out. I'd probably strike out 2-3 times a year. Right? But those 2-3 times a year, I would ruin the game completely because it would completely throw off my game. And he would tell me, he was like, man, it's part of the game. You gotta suck it up. You struck out. Now go out there and play how you know how to play. But the thing is, I would get caught in, again, going back to that mental mindset. I would get caught in this mental trap of, oh, I struck out, I gotta feel bad for myself, victim mindset, this is that, right? And so I got caught in that victim mindset, and it would ruin the game. I remember this one game, I was hitting really well that game. I already 2 at-bats, and I had 2 triples. But then I struck out. And then my next at-bat, I flied out. It was like a foul ball fly out, right? Crappy, with a man on base too, and we lost the game. So he would always tell me that I needed more confidence when I'm playing, even though I'm really good. It's just he can tell and sense, and coaches can sense when you're confident or not, or when you want to be there. Another story is this. When I would do door-to-door sales, selling window cleaning. Great business for anyone, who's young and wants to make some cash, Deal with people, you learn a lot going door to door. And I just, again, struggled with my confidence. I did it with my buddy, and he was an amazing salesman. He just has the confidence and, not the wit in a bad way, but the wit in a good way. Because he's just one of those people where he enjoys speaking to everyone that he speaks to. He wants to learn more. He's also just interested, right? He doesn't do it out of devilish pursuits. He does it out of enjoyment, And I would try and I would try and follow what he does. I would try and learn from him. But when you have that skill, to speak to people, right? I have a good skill of speaking to people too, but he was just, on it, And it's not necessarily the speaking to people part, which I'm not confident in. I'm confident in speaking to people. I love speaking to people. But it's just, I'm too passive, right? So when we were doing door to door, I would be insanely passive to the point where, like, me as the business owner, I would ask people if it was okay, let's say, to come by at this time. Instead of being like, oh yeah, that's a spot that we have open, we have to come by at that time. Because when you're a business and those people are your clients and they're using your service, you're in, it's your pursuit. So you shouldn't be listening to people on what they say works for them. Whatever works for you because it's your business. So again, I struggled with my confidence, right? And I would say the biggest thing with confidence is just putting in the action instead of just staring at yourself in the mirror and telling yourself, I'm amazing, I'm this, I'm that. Because honestly, it's not going to work. I'm going to be honest with you. It'll work, like, to give you a positive mindset, but to build confidence, it does a little bit. But actually putting in the action does what needs to happen for your confidence. Because when you can look down and you see this trophy or that book that you've read or that sale that you've made, it's all a confidence booster because you're like, yeah, I've done all that. So why am I worried? And the biggest thing is, even if you fail, you got to keep your head up high. Failure is the biggest hoax we were taught and indoctrinated as kids, because failure is success. It truly is. And if you see everything as a success, you will succeed. Failure is not real. And I'll be honest, success is not real. They're both not real. They're just emotions that you feel, right? Both of them aren't real. The only thing that is real is the change that you make in life. And it goes the same for ups and downs. You could say that, oh, your cat died, so now you're on a downer. Or you could say, oh, my cat died, but now I'm on an upper because now I'm going to get a new cat. You get what I mean? That sounds pretty fricked up of me to say. But there's no such thing as failing or succeeding. It's just all a feeling and how you feel. Yes, you feel success, and yes, you feel failure, but how do you feel those emotions? Are you letting that success blind you? Are you letting that failure blind you? Are you letting that failure put you on a downer? Are you letting that success put you on a downer? Or are you balanced? You know that success is success, just a word, and failure is failure, just a word. And you know that there's higher mountains to climb. We're gonna be on this earth for 100 and a million years. So much that we can do in that period of time for success, right? So if there's all these mountains to climb, why do you pick that one mountain to say that you've made it? Or why do you pick that one little crevice that you fell through to say that you failed? There's no such thing as failure or success. It's just how you feel in that moment and knowing that you've succeeded and that there's bigger mountains to chase. It's kind of like Uncharted in a way. Nathan Drake, they go and he collects treasure, but the treasure is never enough because there's always more treasure to collect. The reason that's the truth. So everything is success, and that is how you can build your confidence in doing it. Now, if I had to summarize what we've spoken about, and just to remind you, is, again, dealing with injuries as an athlete, right? It's all a mindset. It's very easy to get into that mindset of fear, but you have to let that out and understand that injury is just temporary, and the actions that you take while you're injured are going to lead to your success. You know? Next was mental toughness. Speaking to that mental toughness coach, Ronan Byrne. You know, he, again, played pro rugby, 5-time Ironman triathlete, Spartan competitor, marathon runner, won bodybuilding shows, owns a successful mental toughness business, right? And he even said that you just gotta do what you fear most. It's that simple. That's simple, man. And then confidence. Gotta put in the actions instead of looking in the mirror and saying to yourself what you're amazing at or this is that. Failure's a hoax. Success and failure are just words that you perceive to say like, oh, I've succeeded, you know? And yes, you can succeed. Anyone can, but you have to realize that everything is a success and it's a learning curve. Even the success is a learning curve. So instead of calling it success or failure or success, why don't we just call it learning? I've learned. Doesn't that make you feel amazing? You've learned. You grew. Anyways, this was an amazing podcast, and I hope that you all enjoyed it. Please leave a like and subscribe. And remember, the theory is only true if you perceive it as.